I wonder why it is that so many people on the left don't know anything about guns, don't do research on guns, don't bother to look up what the laws being proposed are, and then sound silly. Joe Biden, he wants to ban basically every single gun. Beto O'Rourke also wants to ban basically every single gun. Now, they'll tell you that's not true, but let me clarify. The assault weapons bill, as proposed, would ban almost every single gun. I am not being hyperbolic. I am being, actually, if anything, I'm kind of toning it down because some would say that it's a complete confiscation of all guns. Joe Biden, he called for a ban on all magazines. Now, maybe you could say it's a gaffe, but what did he say? Any magazine that can hold more than, there we go, multiple bullets, he said. Magazines that would hold multiple bullets, literally a magazine. So what would end up happening is semi-automatic. I'm going to pretend like it's a bunch of liberals who don't know anything about guns. Semi-automatic means you load the gun, you pull the trigger, and it puts another bullet in the chamber. It doesn't mean you pull the trigger and it keeps firing and spraying. It means one trigger pull, one bullet. That's the overwhelming majority of guns. Effectively, like a revolver is semi-auto because it, rotates, but it's not necessarily. So the assault weapons ban would basically ban everything other than like revolvers. You could also have lever action and bolt action rifles. And it has been proposed that you can still own a gun if it can fire one bullet at a time every time you load. But that's basically banning all guns. Here's the thing, okay? I'm not a gun person. I'm not a gun nut. I don't own one. I may in the future. But most Americans oppose ban on assault rifles. Now, hold on. Here's another big problem, Gallup, and I'm actually quite offended that Gallup did this. Assault rifles have always been illegal. An assault rifle is defined as a selective fire rifle. Now, again, I'm probably preaching to people who know way more about this than I do. But that selective fire means you can do burst shot, full auto, or semi-auto. So you can switch between. The militaries use assault rifles. An AR-15 is not an assault rifle. It is just a standard semi-automatic rifle. In fact, when they talk about, why don't you just get a hunting rifle, they're basically the same thing. Well, they're expanding what they're calling for, and here's the reason why I'm doing this video, because again, I'm not a big gun nut, okay? I probably fall with most Americans saying stricter gun laws make sense, but hear me out. Stricter gun laws doesn't mean not allowing people to own guns. It just means like, can we do a mental health check, a background check, for which pretty much exist as it is. So I want to be careful on the stricter gun laws thing because maybe stricter isn't the right word. Maybe more effective to ensure that people have the right to bear arms under the Constitution, but also that we're thinking smart about what's going on with these mass shooting events and how we can effectively embrace some kind of policy or law to protect the rights of the innocent and safeguard us against those that are nuts. I'm not saying I have an answer. I don't. So maybe stricter isn't the right response, but I would imagine there are a lot of people that view it similarly to I do as a moderate. I don't want any of these things banned, because I've done the base level research. I've looked up and seen that, most people who own guns legally don't even commit any crimes and barely ever use them. Some people do it for sport. You're allowed to do it. But now we have both Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke calling for essentially a complete confiscation. And I really do mean this. Okay, I'm not being hyperbolic. That's the important point. Not a gun person, don't own a gun, not being hyperbolic. You need to read the assault weapons ban. It specifically says semi-automatic firearm capable of accepting a detachable magazine. Let's click this and you can see it's basically every single handgun. That's how they operate. Sure, there's revolvers or whatever. Let me make sure I show this again, just to make sure you guys understand. Assault weapon, as defined in the United States, says semi-automatic firearm, detachable magazine. Okay. Joe Biden said ban magazines that hold multiple bullets. Multiple, more than one. So what is he suggesting? That you can buy a handgun that can single load a bullet and fire and then single load? That makes no sense. I'm not even sure those things exist. I guess the 3D printed ones do. But here, again, they say common attributes used in the legislative definitions of assault weapons include semi-automatic firearm capable of accepting a detachable magazine, which includes the standard handgun. Like I say standard because that's like what every cop has, what most people has. And Biden says no compromise. He goes extreme. All magazines, and he's going after people in Texas for wanting to defend themselves. Look, when Joe Biden said this, my immediate reaction was, is he gaffing? You know, assault type weapons, magazines that can hold multiple bullets in them. It's absolutely mindless. What? What? You're basically saying ban all guns. So we get it. Joe Biden's a gaff machine. And maybe he meant high capacity magazines, but that's not what he said. He just said, like, here's the reason I think it's a gaff. For one, he's a gaff king. Magazines that can hold multiple bullets in them is literally all magazines. And if he meant that, he probably would have said all magazines. He probably would have said ban magazines in general. Ban the ability of any gun to fire more than one bullet without being reloaded. But Beto O'Rourke has gone one step further. Beto O'Rourke has literally called for the confiscation of all 90-something% guns. Okay, well, I'm trying to avoid being hyperbolic. But as I've shown you already, he's talking about handguns. So let's read a little bit of this and I'll tell you a story. Politico reports, and this is a couple weeks ago, Beto O'Rourke called Friday for gun licensing and a mandatory buyback program for assault weapons, expanding on a controversial gun control platform he advanced in his return to the presidential campaign the previous day. Part of a proposal to address gun violence and white nationalism? What? Pretty sure the dude who was in Ohio wasn't a white nationalist. O'Rourke said that if enacted, anyone who failed to forfeit a banned assault weapon would be fined. The mandatory buyback proposal goes further than most Democrats in the 2020 presidential field, though Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has suggested she supports such a program. So let me stress, this is the most important thing. He's talking about handguns, okay? I went to the March for Our Life thing where you had all those people marching against weapons. And I basically asked every group, do you think that like a Glock should be banned under the assault weapons ban? And they say, no, of course not. And I say, well, then why are you supporting a law that would ban them? Because they didn't read the law. It's all, you know what, man? You know, the Democrats are nuts. They're absolutely nuts. I believe in fixing the environment. I believe there can be sound gun policy. I don't want to call it common sense because that's a stupid buzzword. No, but I think if we actually sat down and talked with the firearms community, there would be a way to, for one, we'd probably have to remove some laws in some places and then create a national laws. It's hard to explain, I guess. For one, I don't want to pretend like I know more than the average person. So I guarantee there's already going to be a ton of people commenting saying, here's what you got wrong. I get it. And that's why I think we need to actually sit down and talk about the current laws, the current capacity of the weapons, how people on average get them, and why we're talking about it in the first place. I would stress there's been a meme going around talking about preventable deaths, of which rifles account for like very little. In which case, I don't believe it's a conspiracy to seize your guns. I think it's a boogeyman. You know, these AR-15s look scary, and then we see these tragedies, the tragic events, and so the Democrats are like, even though it's not a serious problem relative to like I don't know, heart disease or something, or peanut allergies, like which kill way more people, it's scarier. It's also why he talks about white nationalism and not the fact that there are far left militias that are armed as well. Because the media doesn't talk about them. They're not scared by this. They poo-poo it, actually. Oh, Antifa's no big deal. So what? They cracked a guy over the head and put him in the hospital. And I'm not talking about Andy, no. I'm talking about the guy in Portland. Oh, actually, Andy was in Portland, too. Okay, 2 guys in Portland were cracked over the head with brain injuries because of Antifa. They don't talk about it. In fact, there was recently a mass shooting where the perpetrator killed 10 people at a high school game, and they didn't talk about that either. And many people believe it was because it didn't fit the white nationalist, racial narrative. They found a boogeyman. They want to use that boogeyman to gain power, right? To rally voters. But most people disagree with this. It makes me wonder. I think what you often see in the primaries, and of course many of us have talked about this before, they pander to the farthest of the left, the activist base, so they can win the primary and then bring it back to the center for the general. But they've gone too far. Both Biden and O'Rourke calling for basically a ban on 95% of guns, when we can see, according to Gallup, Americans do support stricter gun laws, but not banning assault rifles. The important thing is assault rifle makes literally no sense because they're already illegal, but sure, what they mean is assault weapon, and they're confusing the issue. They say there's big support, widespread support for background checks. I'm pretty sure there already are federal background checks. I'm not entirely sure because I know it's been an issue in the mainstream, the conversation about them. Universal background checks. The importance of gun control as a voting issue has increased in the past 2 decades. Americans supported 6 of 7 ways to deter mass shootings a month after Parkland. They say At the same time, Americans thought prevention efforts, mental health screenings, would be more effective than stricter gun laws. So it looks like, you know what, man? Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden are pandering to no one, because the average American is actually embracing this from a kind of common sense point of view. I also want to stress it's not a conservative issue, because states like New Hampshire and Vermont, for instance, they're blue states, but people there own weapons. Maine, for instance, I'm pretty sure Maine is blue, but the gun laws are ridiculously lax there. Like, I'm pretty sure if you can live there, you can just go and just show up and buy a gun. I'm pretty sure they do a background check, but it's pretty quick. And I think they have no permit concealed carry. There are some states that are like that tend to be red, but this isn't a conservative versus liberal issue. It's a woke, progressive, far left issue of banning everyone's guns. And I gotta admit, nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing makes sense for one reason. They claim that Trump is a fascist, they claim the white nationalists are taking over, and then they beg the government, which they think is fascist, to take their guns. So I don't know, man. You know, I saw these two stories, and the Joe Biden gaffe, or maybe it's not a gaffe, maybe he's serious, he wants to ban all magazines. I mean, theoretically, the assault weapons ban would do that. But it seems like they're getting more and more extreme, and they're crazy. All magazines hold multiple bullets, that's the point. This call from Biden would ban most handguns, right, except for like revolvers or I guess single load guns, which probably exist. I don't know anything about it though. But anyway, Joe Biden ends by saying, I think this is no compromise. This is one we have to just push and push and push and push and push, and you'll never win. It will never happen. If they banned all guns, that's the quickest way to see. I mean, first of all, I really doubt police departments would enforce that law. I'd be shocked. Maybe in big cities, but not in urban areas. And we've already seen some police up in the Pacific Northwest refusing to enforce some of these bans. So the Democrats have gone nuts, I'll put it that way. If most Americans don't agree with you, why would you pander to a policy nobody wants? I don't know, whatever. Bit off the cuff, but I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment will be at 4 p.m. on the main channel. YouTube.com/Timcast is a different channel, and I will see you all there.